Awesome. So for everyone who doesn't know me, I'm sure you all do at this point. My name's Derek. I am the secretary with the EDA, and I am here with Andrew West, who is yet another of the Green Party leadership candidates. So I'll just let you introduce yourself, Andrew. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're running about.
Sure. Well, my name's Andrew West. I am one of the contestants for the Green Party of Ontario. I am running on a moderate platform. I know this is the best way that the Green Party will get elected. And from all the people that I've been talking to on the phone, the majority of people support this vision. And they know that we have great policies, super policies that help people and help our planet. But they're not going to be doing anything if we continue to stay on the sidelines. We need to get elected so we can put our policies into practice. And I offer the best option for us to get elected in a general election. I've been a candidate 4 times for the Green Party, 3 for the Green Party of Ontario, once for the Green Party of Canada. I'm the Attorney General critic for the Green Party of Ontario. And I am more than welcome to take more of your phone calls, or not phone calls, Zoom calls.
Doing a lot of phone calls, I bet, hey?
I've been doing phone calls all day today.
It is.
So that's on my brain.
Absolutely. It's kind of the only super effective way to reach a lot of people with the pandemic. It would seem to me. There's a lot of people making calls.
Yeah, it is. It's still the best way. When you can't go door to door, phone calls is the next best thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we begin, I'd like to say that I am hosting from the unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation, and I'd just like to apologize for the serious number of times I've forgotten to mention that. I'm new to understanding First Nations sovereignty and rights, and I'd just like to issue a blanket apology. If I forget to do that again, it's really disrespectful of me. But yeah, this is Snuneymuxw. I live right down the road from the reserve, actually. So the first question that we have is about CERB, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. I don't know if I have that right yet. I'm never going to remember it.
I think you got it.
Okay, good. So CERB has been a critical emergency measure to help Canadians weather the COVID-19 pandemic, but some people have said that it's become a disincentive to low-income Canadians going back to work. How do you see a guaranteed livable income being different? And how would you implement a GLI in order to ensure that it does not become a disincentive to work? And what do you see as the main benefits of it?
Well, the benefit of a guaranteed livable income is that it takes care of our people and ensures that everyone has enough money and resources to be able to pay for food, pay for rent, pay for heat in the wintertime. And these are values that we as Greens share, and I believe most Canadians share as well. Now, I'm a very big supporter of guaranteed livable income, but I'm not naive enough to say I know the best way to go about doing it. And here's the great thing, and you're the first people that are actually hearing this. I've actually scheduled a meeting, and it's going to take place, I believe it is September the 14th or the 15th, whatever the Tuesday is, the 15th. So September the 15th with Ron Heichel. He is someone that was involved in a pilot project on guaranteed livable income in Manitoba in the 70s. He is about the greatest expert you could have on this subject matter. And I'm going to be asking him those very same questions. There's a lot of people are talking about it's a disincentive for people to go back to work. Is it possible to have a guaranteed livable income while still having a thriving economy? Is this something that can help? What are the other benefits with guaranteed livable income? Can it consolidate other programs? All of these questions are going to be asked with him. So that's your best outlook, or that's your best source of material and guaranteed livable income. So please, 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 if you want to, message me at andrew.west@greenparty.ca to register for this interview. It's going to be at 7 o'clock Eastern time. And again, it'll be the best way for everyone in the Green Party to get solid answers on a guaranteed livable income. I've had questions since I've been a candidate on guaranteed livable income. And I've asked the party certain questions, and I've never really gotten the best answers. So this will be a great opportunity for every Green Party member who wants to get involved to get the best answers. And rather than thrusting it down people's throats, like I believe some others are doing, I'm opening the floor to all Green members to ask questions so we can actually get the best answers possible.
Oh, that's great. Sounds
Yeah.
sounds like a super informative event. So that's this coming Tuesday.
No, it is the
Or
following.
oh wait, it'd be a couple weeks away then, wouldn't that be?
Yeah, there's
That'd be
always
so
plenty of time to get the word out. So please spread the word. Again,
yeah,
guaranteed little income is a very, very important part of the Green Party platform. And it's something that's very, very important to most Greens and I believe most Canadians. So let's get some of these questions answered properly from an expert.
absolutely. I feel like that's would be a really informative nonpartisan thing for people to watch without knowledge of this subject in depth. So that'd be Tuesday, September 15th. And if it's at 7 Eastern time, that'll be at 4 our time because you guys are 3 hours ahead of us.
Yeah,
Just for
so
everyone watching.
unfortunately, it's going to be inconvenient for people in British Columbia, but I will be posting it. We're recording it, and we'll be posting it on my website, and YouTube channel, so others can watch it after the fact. And you make a great point. It's not just something that Green parties would be interested just Green Party members. Hopefully, this would be of interest to many people. I think that CERB has shown that there is at least an appetite for, at the very least, learning more about a guaranteed livable income. So please spread the word to non-Greens as well, because I mean, this does span well beyond our membership.
Yeah, it's become a very, very prominent conversation topic across the board. So the next question that we've got here is about drug prohibition. So what's your stance on it? First of all, do you support decriminalizing or legalizing drugs in Canada? And if so, what approach would you support and why?
I do support decriminalizing drugs in Canada. And a model that I would follow would be what the national strategy that Portugal implemented in 1999. They decriminalized it, but it wasn't just a matter of just decriminalize. They didn't legalize drugs, they decriminalized it. And they still went after drug trafficking. But what they did was they created these programs for people who were suffering from the effects of being addicted to drugs. And rather than treating it as a criminal offense, they treated it as a health issue. So it was just as common to be treated, well, not just as common, but it was just as normal to be treated for drug addiction as it would be if you had a heart condition or asthma or any other medical issue. And that really helped, one, destigmatize it and also tackle the main problem so they could, people who were suffering from the effects of this illness got the proper treatment. And the yearly death total in Portugal went from about 400 down to about 40 over the span of this period of work that had taken place. Now, it wasn't all rosy in the sense that, as effective as it was, and another thing that actually was part of this program were initiatives after the fact to keep people working, to get them back integrated in the community. And when I say not all rosy, is because Europe hit some hard economic times a couple of years ago, and because they weren't properly prepared, I believe, some of these programs took a cut. And that was unfortunate because it's like you get so far with a person in the progress of recovery, and then you just stops. You miss this last vital part, which is kind of integrating them back into the normal economy. So if we were to implement a program like this, we have to make sure that our economy is strong. And that's why I've really, really kind of driven home this message throughout my campaign of fiscal responsibility. Because if we aren't fiscally responsible, one, we're not going to get people to vote for us. And two, we could get ourselves, if we were to get elected, get ourselves into really hard economic times where a lot of austerity measures will have to take place, and programs like this, if it were in place, would have to be cut. So Portugal's a great lesson in this matter on two fronts. One, how to do it, and one, how to be prepared if hard economic times come along.
Great. Yeah. So that actually ties really nicely into our next question. It seems like we've almost got an answer on that already.
Oh, great.
Well, maybe not, actually. I'm not going to pretend I know your mind. So with this pandemic, our government's been spending a whole lot of money, and we've accrued a certain amount of deficit. It's been growing, and what we're wondering is this a problem in your view? Is it a big problem? Some people think that Canada won't have any choice but to bring in austerity measures and to recover from this, right? So do you think that we can get out of the pandemic without bringing in cuts to programs, or is that going to be necessary?
I would hope it's not necessary. It depends on the government that's in place. These type of programs that we have in place are really important to Canadians, and Canadians would rather not see them cut because they're very important to helping people. But at the same time, Canadians know that there's only so much money to go around, and we have to make sure that we spend wisely. So first and foremost, we have to look at the Liberal government. They promised two deficits and then surpluses. From that point on, well, that was a broken promise. Had they kept their promise, and had they had a program like guaranteed livable income in place, we would be in a better position right now, and our deficit would not be the estimated 343 billion it's supposed to be this year.
Wow.
So the Green Party platform in the last election was to have balanced budgets within 5 years. That seems to be probably unrealistic, but we should still aim to achieve balanced budgets. Surpluses are better in good economic times. Some other contestants will disagree with this, but my position is they're good in economic times because you're paying down the debt. And when you pay down the debt, that means you're paying out less in interest payments, and that money can actually go towards more programs. Deficits are good at certain times. The 2008 financial crisis, was one, and now is another perfect example of when a deficit is needed. But they should be the exception, not the norm.
Right.
So I think that we can have balanced budgets again in surplus without having the austerity measures that might come across if we continue to have deficit after deficit after deficit. But we have to start controlling our spending now. There's $60 billion that we give to the oil and gas industry each year in subsidies and credits that we could transition into renewable energy, into the green economy, and have programs in research and development that actually help Canada and help Canada's growth. And if we're smart about it, we can actually start to have balanced budgets again. And that's the way to go. Again, start paying down the debt so we have less money going out in interest payments. That's just interest going away forever. That could be going towards programs to help people.
Right. Yeah, that interest, yeah, can pile up for sure.
Oh yeah, and
If anyone has car payments, they're familiar with that, I'm sure.
that's what a lot of people seem to forget, is that these interest payments aren't going away. And if we don't control that debt, the bondholders are going to ask for these austerity measures and cuts to social programs because they're who we owe the debt to. And
Right.
we don't want to get ourselves into that position.
What do you think about loaning from the Bank of Canada? I spoke with a gentleman on the Paul Manley campaign who was pretty adamant that the fact that we owe all of this interest to private people is kind of atrocious. You know?
Well, the majority of our debt's owed by Canadians in
Right.
the saving bonds. So
Mm.
they benefit from the interest from those bonds.
Okay.
Uh, I First off, I'm not a fan of the idea of the Bank of Canada printing money,
Okay.
but I do see other banks make profit after profit, record-breaking profits quarter after quarter, and wonder why, we can't be loaning money to people at a better interest rate for mortgages and then benefiting from that ourselves.
Mhm.
That's not something I've made part of my platform because I honestly don't know all the details in it. I'm sure other people have. In fact, I was looking into it, and at one point, Canada Post was a bit of a semi-bank for some remote communities. a long time ago.
Yeah,
So
postal banking.
yeah, so it's possible that possibly the Bank of Canada or Canada Post can get back into something like that if it can help benefit Canadians and the Canadian government at the same time. And that's kind of the platform that I'm pushing for, is a win-win solution. Like guaranteed little income helps people, but it can also be economically beneficial. National Pharmacare Plan helps people, and it can keep provinces from negotiating against each other, driving up prices for large pharmaceutical companies.
Right.
If we pitch things as a win-win option, this is the way that we're going to get more seats for the Green Party.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. My financial literacy is pretty low. I just that I have this basic idea that I understood about it, so I wanted to throw that in there. So the next
No,
question that we've got. Okay. Yeah. I hope I wasn't talking out of my butt, so to speak. So
that's
next
fine.
question we've got is there's been a critique that many in the renewable energy crowd want to continue the perpetual growth model, just change it to green growth. And as we know, perpetual growth in a finite system is physically impossible.
Yes.
So do you think that we should have economic growth as the main goal for our economy? Or should we be looking more at a kind of steady state or even planned degrowth economy
Well,
down
I
to a level of
know
manageable size?
growth, Canada, most Canadians want a strong economy. They rely on a strong economy for jobs and how they're going to pay for their children's education, how they're going to pay for their senior parents. So it's important that we have a strong economy. Now, having said that, I know that there's a group of people within the Green Party that is actually against growth, period. And I have compassion for them, and I understand, and I hope that my vision still relates to them. But I do believe in green growth, in sustainable growth. This is possible. Obviously, we have a finite amount of natural resources. And in British Columbia, I know that you have old forests. I forget what the actual term is. Old growth forest. I think that's
Yeah,
what it's called.
ancient forest. It's a nebulous term.
Ancient
Old
forest.
growth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're very important for your ecological, for the ecosystem in British Columbia. And the rate that they're being resourced is not the same rate that you can replenish. And that's a problem. We can't have that. But having said that, we can have green growth. I mean, the United Nations and the OECD both support green, sustainable, clean growth. And we can do this with putting money into research and development, for example, looking into more green technologies, making sure that we look into bio fuels, agriculture. All of this can be green growth, research and development, technology, innovation. All of this stuff is considered growth. And if done the right way, it can be sustainable. I mean, this was one of the part of the goals, I believe, of the 1992 Rio summit. And not all that has been achieved, but it's still supported by many organizations. And I know that with the right willpower and the right leadership, that we can have this clean, sustainable, green growth.
Right. Right. I see what you're saying about like there's no limit to the amount of knowledge we can gain, kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Fair enough. So the next question that
It's important is to distinction that, again, I know there's certain Greens in the Green Party that's anti-growth, but growth and abuse of our natural resources can be separate. They don't have to be the same thing. And so we can have green growth and still protect our natural resources.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've seen a lot talked about with the decoupling of emissions from GDP growth in a lot of places.
Yes,
So
and
yeah, that makes sense.
even looking into more sustainability, like biofuels for airplanes. I mean, this is now a thing. Working in that field leads to sustainable economic green growth.
Right. Right. Cool. So the
Yeah.
next question we've got is about Indigenous sovereignty and how it can sometimes conflict with fossil fuel development. So some Indigenous groups in Canada have been on the front lines of resisting fossil fuel development while some others have embraced it and have even partnered with fossil fuel corporations or want to buy into big projects. So, what exactly do you think the Green Party of Canada's approach should be in regards to respecting Indigenous sovereignty when some nations and groups, and maybe some others, decide to invest in LNG oil sands development or pipelines, and some decide not to?
I think that a lot of First Nation communities do want the environment and to protect the environment. I mean, that's part of their culture. That's part of their upbringing. It's something that has been ingrained in their lifestyle since for many generations. But many First Nations, quite frankly, endure incredible poverty. And there's many homes on First Nations that are most Canadians would find unlivable. They're overhoused. I mean, one house is overpopulated, I should say. There's too many people in the one house, and the conditions of these homes are terrible. There's many First Nations still on water boil advisories. They don't have the proper infrastructure for running water or clean water. They don't have the economic means of getting in healthy food. So these are all reasons why it's attractive to partner with energy projects, even if it's fossil fuel energy projects, because it brings money into their communities. So what we need to do, and I'm for more First Nation autonomy, because if they're able to have more, if we come up with more treaties with First Nations, and more First Nations communities can actually not be covered under the Indian Act and have more autonomy over their own economy, over their own policing, over their own health, schooling, lots of different things. So what we need to do is actually start shifting away from the oil and gas industry into the green economy, and then look to partnering with First Nations, which they should always be taken into consideration for partnership, and show that we can have these green projects that are economically viable to the First Nation communities. So they don't have to rely on the fossil fuel energy projects to bring revenue into their communities. That's why, again, I talk about shifting the $60 billion that we put into oil and gas into the green economy, which is the fastest growing part of Canada's economy. And if we do that, start working on national energy grid, start working on, national rail, start working on more renewable energy such as wind and solar, more community-based projects that First Nations could actually not only partner with, but actually fully operate.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's something that a lot of First Nations communities will buy into more, because again, it protects the environment, but it also provides that economic benefit that a lot of them desperately need.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really rough on a lot of reservations.
It is.
It's
It's terrible. It's really bad, and I don't think a lot of people know that. It's out of sight, out of mind. But it's. I mean, how would you? I mean, I know you. I can definitely share that you probably relate to this, but so I shouldn't say how would you feel, but the average Canadian who might not be aware of it, how would they feel if they had to boil their water every time they wanted to drink?
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's interesting. Here in Nanaimo, we actually I grew up with periodic boil water advisories.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we had some issues with our water storage, and like if it overflowed, then I don't know, the sewage mixed. I don't know why it happened, but I'm sure somebody from Nanaimo could tell you, and I'm sure one of the viewers watching knows, and they're gonna say, "I can't believe Derek doesn't know why that is." But yeah, I grew up with those.
Well, I'm sorry about that. But
no, it was once in a while. It's nothing compared to the way it is on reservations. It was a fun adventure thing during the winter once in a while. Not a daily camping kind of scenario.
No, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So the next question that we've got here is about police brutality and systemic racism. So in the wake of the death of George Floyd, international protests have been calling for the defunding of police to address systemic racism and police brutality in general. However, the term defunding the police means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It's a pretty nebulous term. So, do you support the idea of defunding the police in some capacity? And if so, what exactly does it mean to you? What would you sort of be calling for as the leader of the Green Party of Canada?
Well, first and foremost, I think Canadians share this view that they want safe communities and they want to feel safe in their communities, and they want to know that the people that are hired to protect them are going to protect them. That's something that we really need to make sure is in place, because all Canadians deserve to have the freedom to walk out the door and feel like they will be safe. I support reallocations of funds. And I use an example that happened here in Toronto. I think it was May. A young woman named Regis Perchinsky Parquet, and if I mispronounced her name, I apologize, but it's pretty close to that. Her parents, her mother, called the police because Regis was having, she had mental health issues, and she was having some epileptic seizures. And they felt that she was at a risk to herself, and so they called the police. Now, in hindsight, you can probably see that police officers who are trained for certain hostile situations would probably not be the best people for a situation like that. Maybe a couple to make sure that the public around, given the weather situation is, are safe. But on a situation like that, and I don't know what has happened with the 911 call and what the mother who called the 911 said to the 911 and what 911 said, the dispatcher said to the police. I don't know what happened in that chain. But in retrospect, you can see that that probably wasn't the best way to handle a situation like that. Someone better trained in mental health issues could have been there to address the situation. And this is the type of example that can be in place for many other situations across Canada. I do know that in Ottawa, where I live, there were initiatives to actually have more community engagement with police, but that was actually stopped with budget cuts. But there was such an outpour of requests from the community to re-implement it that they recently have done it. So they're trying to bridge that gap of just policing to community building and actually getting out in the community and knowing people. So that's another example. So those are two ways that I think that we can reallocate our funds to make sure that there's better players in place to address better the situations properly.
Right. Yeah. So reallocation of funds to get the appropriate people for the appropriate jobs, right?
That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So we actually have a question from someone here, MS, in the chat. Their question is, what are your thoughts on electoral reform, in particular Senate reform and proportional representation in the House of Commons?
This is by MS?
MS, yes. I'm not sure what that stands for.
I don't either, but you are talking to the right person. I promise you that. So first off, electoral reform is very, very important to me. I've been a candidate 4 times for the Green Party. And the second time I ran was a federal election. And I ran in a riding called Canada Carleton. And it was actually targeted by the organization Lead Now for people to vote strategic. And we had signs up all over the riding, these yellow signs. It said, thought about voting strategic, now's the time, or words to that effect. So we got hit hard. Like, I remember going door to door months before the election, and people thought I was great. They knew who I was because it was the second time as a candidate. They liked me, they liked the Green Party. And that messaging changed in the last couple of weeks to, yes, we love you, but we're voting Liberal, because that was the strategic vote. So since then, I've been talking with grade 10 students all around Ottawa about my experience in politics, but I would also talk about proportional representation. I can't talk about I just can't show the Green Party platform, but I can talk about something that I feel is important to all Canadians, which was proportional representation. So I would get the students to, I would turn the classroom into a legislature and get the students to pass bills under first past the post, and then pass bills under a PR system, and let them see how different the two are and which one they would like better. And the majority of the time, almost exclusively, the students preferred a PR system, proportional representation system. So it's such an important issue for me that when the Electoral Reform Committee was in place and taking submissions, that I actually put forward a proposal that me and two other people put a ton of research in. And it not only addressed, we looked at every issue that people had with proportional representation, why it was getting shot down all the time. People are saying that they can't elect their own member of parliament. People wanted a simple ballot. And people are also concerned about Senate reform. So what we did was we created a proposal, and I don't know where my chat is on this. Here we go.
That sounds really frustrating, having gotten stymied by a third-party organization coming in there.
Oh, it was so frustrating. They were standing outside of doors for town hall debates with these flyers, passing it around, saying, with a graph saying, the Liberals are your only chance to stop Stephen Harper and the Conservatives. And I'm sure people remember the 2014 election or 15 election, sorry, and that messaging. And it was really a false narrative. And an example I like to use is where I actually live, Ottawa Centre. They had a very strong NDP member of parliament for many years. And the Conservative finished a distant third, almost exclusively for many years. There was no chance that this Conservative candidate would ever win. But that narrative of stopping Stephen Harper was so strong that in this strong NDP riding, they elected a Liberal, even though there's no chance the Conservative could possibly win. So we put forward this proposal, BMP. And so it actually addresses both electoral reform and Senate reform. So essentially, it's a mixed member proportional system. But in most mixed member systems, you have your elected seats, and then you have your set-off seats in the same legislature. We moved the set-off seats into the Senate, and it becomes the Senate. So now a bill would have to pass through the House of Commons, but then also have to pass through the proportional Senate. And we did a lot of work of how we could address how the Senate was unfair in certain areas of Canada, how the West thought that the Senate didn't truly represent them. We really put a lot of effort into making sure that this proposal addressed so many people's concerns. And I think that this is the proposal that many Canadians could buy into, and it will give us not only Senate reform, but most importantly, electoral reform. So please, it hasn't been updated since 2017, but please take a look at this website. Please give me your thoughts. I'd love to hear it. Most people that have seen this have thought, I'm not so sure about it. I love when this happens. They say they're not so sure about it, and then they read it and come back to me and tell me how amazing it is.
So when people say they're not so sure about it, have you had any specific service level things that set people off and make them not sure about it? Or is it just like, I don't know what that is?
First and foremost is, I don't know what that is. It seems grand. Like, they think of electoral reform as a few options. So this includes the Senate. So it's something that a lot of Canadians have never really thought about. But let's be honest, electoral reform is extremely important to the Green Party, extremely important. But for the average Canadian, I would argue that Senate reform is far, far more important than electoral reform. So this is a way that we can sell electoral reform to Canadians and give them what they want, which is mostly Senate reform, but still apply electoral reform. Now, to do this properly would require some constitutional amendments. But there is a version that we can put in place. It's not an ideal version of this system where we wouldn't have to do constitutional amendments. But ideally, we would need to do some constitutional amendments with the Senate. Not many, mostly just the big one would be that once they're appointed, they get to stay on till they're 75. If we can strike that out, that goes a long way into making sure that we can have this type of system. So even the reforms to the Constitution are not minor, but any constitutional reform is a major feat because it requires most of Canada to buy into it, the provinces. So, but I think a lot of provinces would buy into this type of system because it actually benefits them because it's reallocating how the Senate is utilized, which a lot of provinces want.
Right. Yeah, onto those 75. I didn't know that. That seems like a pretty serious way to entrench power almost.
It's a lifetime appointment.
Yeah.
Actually,
Not sure how I feel about that. I've never looked into that. Well, that's very cool. That's very cool that you came up with a whole system about this.
Thank you.
That idea of melding the Senate reform with the electoral reform seems like it's sort of in line with the general sort of idea that you've got with trying to cast a wide enough net that we don't turn people off, kind of thing. Be able to catch things that are popular at the same time. I found out the name of the person who asked the question. M stands for Mark. I don't know what the last name was.
Okay.
And they have. Sorry. So for everyone watching, the link to that Andrew shared here in our Zoom chat is in the YouTube chat now. If you want to check out your BMP policy there.
Yes.
So the next question
stands for bicameral mixed member. So it's a mixed member system, but bicameral means two houses.
Oh, cool.
So that's the House of Commons and the Senate.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So again, it's a mixed member system, and actually, if you look into the Green Party platform of what system they would incur, there's a lot of specifics for what electoral system the Green Party would support, and this meets all of those requirements.
Okay, very cool. So we've got another question from this Mark S in the chat again. There's a sizable number of disaffected moderates from the Liberal and Conservative parties who might be attracted to the Green Party, but are nervous about joining a leftist party. What can you say to assuage their concerns?
Well, I feel I am the one candidate that's continuing this motto that the Green Party's had for quite some time, which is not left, not right, forward. We have a majority of candidates in this contest that want to shift the party to the left, to be more like the NDP, even more further left than the NDP. And I feel that this is a big mistake because if you look at the history of success with some political parties, it's always been when they're in the center. So when the conservatives, progressive conservatives, and the Reform or the Alliance merged, they were more like the Alliance, more further right. But Stephen Harper smartly pitched the party being more center each election, and they slowly won. They won two minorities, and then finally they won their majority. Now, once elected, they showed their true colors and showed that they were very far to the right and did things like got the Navigable Water Protection Act and the Environmental Protection Act. They were horrible for the environment.
Yeah.
But they did campaign on shifting to the center. Unfortunately, that shows the people are cynical about politics is right because they weren't true to what they were campaigning on. The same with the NDP. As the NDP pitched a more moderate platform under Jack Layton, they won more seats to the point where they became the official opposition. And over time, they started to shift back to what they were prior to Jack Layton. And now with Jagmeet Singh, they're pretty much back to how they were before. And again, they've lost a lot of seats. So to me, this doesn't make sense if our goal is to win seats to try to direct the party in a way that's going to alienate voters. This large block of voters, these red Tories, or I hope in their blue greens, are what win elections. And they want policies that appeal to people, to help people, which our policies do, but they also want fiscal responsibility. And that's why I'm pitching that's really hard in this campaign, because I know that this is our ticket to success. I know this is our ticket to win. And if we have these amazing policies that help people and the environment, and I don't feel the environment's getting enough talk in this leadership campaign, ironically enough. But if we have these policies that help the environment and help our people, and they're fiscally responsible, that's a win-win option that will turn a lot of people who have voted Liberal and Conservatives to the Green Party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting you say that. I actually have met a number, actually knocking on doors for Paul. I had a number of people who were ex-conservative voters say that they wanted to vote for Paul, and even some of the volunteers that we had knocking doors with us were progressive conservatives. I think it might be, or was it the Reform Party? I'm foggy on the details. I'm actually quite new to politics myself, but
Okay.
yeah, that
So,
makes no sense.
so a couple of things real quick, if you don't mind saying. One, I also campaigned, I made phone calls for Paul Manley in his by-election win here from Ottawa. So I helped out on your campaign as well. And two, there was a point in time when the Conservative Party was a very good environmental party. Under Brian Mulroney, they signed on the Montreal Protocol. They passed acid rain legislation. They protected many national parks. I think the only prime minister to protect more national parks has been Jean Chrétien. They were a good party for the environment, but they've lost their way. They're not even close to that party anymore. And the evidence is clear based on the fact of their environmental policies. But there are a lot of people who have voted Conservative in the past, people like conservationists and family farmers that care about the environment, but want to vote for a fiscally responsible party and only see the Green Party as their next option. There's a graph I could show here that was, if I had access to it, I don't know if I do, but I could show you where most Conservative voters, over 50%, I think, don't feel they have a second option to vote for. And so they just vote Conservative.
Mm.
We should be that alternative. We're never going to attract social conservatives because they're always going to vote for the Conservative Party or an even further right-wing party. But British Columbia is a great spot where the Green Party can have even more success because aside from Vancouver Island, where the Green Party's had success, British Columbia is basically split mostly between Conservatives and NDP on a federal level. So if we can appeal to both, then we can just work our way up the middle and attract a lot of voters and win a lot of seats.
They'll never expect it.
That's right.
Yeah.
You get it.
So I was totally wrong. It wasn't Reform. I said this in passing, but it's progressive conservatives, and exactly like you said, the social conservatives don't really have a home other than with. I suppose maybe for the People's Party there was some people went to there for a little bit, but.
And there's smaller parties like the Christian Heritage Party, for example, like some very far right-wing parties. And provincially in Ontario, we have something called like the Trillium Party, for example. In Alberta, there was the Wild Rose Party. They're now part of the Conservative Party there. Mm-hmm. So there's other smaller right-wing parties that would attract very strong social conservatives. They'll never vote for the Green Party, but people who are fiscally responsible will.
Right. Yeah, I guess it goes to show it's interesting that you talk about how there's a lot of people who, like conservationists in particular, brought to mind the fact I was actually in the gun store the other day buying ammunition for a rifle that I own as a legal gun owner. And that might surprise some people, but I had a really long conversation with the guy there who is 100% for the environment. And we got into a little bit of a conversation about veganism where we kind of disagreed, I guess, but it just goes to show that you can't really judge a book by its cover. And there's a lot of people who are, I suppose, in some ways feel like they're right wing, but in some ways feel like they're left wing. And so I can really understand what you're saying about that the slogan, the not left, not right, not forward thing that we're trying to have a concern with.
Yeah. And we have great policies like guaranteed livable income, like I've said, affordable housing. You know, if pitched properly, a program like affordable housing is a great campaign to run on because municipalities are responsible for affordable housing, but they often get a lot of their money from the federal government. And it costs less money for municipalities to pay for a bed in affordable housing than it does to pay for a bed in a hospital or a jail, which can be the alternative for many people without a home. So not only is it socially the right thing to do, but financially it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So next question we got here is about voting age. So Green Party, as you know, has a policy to reduce the voting age to 16. Some people are worried that teenagers are too irresponsible and unrealistic to have that responsibility. What are your thoughts on the issue?
Um, it's not, I truly feel that a lot of 16-year-olds are fully aware of what's happening in this world. They often pay more attention to the news than many adults because they're studying it in class. And they are connected with parties much more than political parties and the political news, again, than many of their parents are. So I think that a lot of Greens do want this because they feel that it would add to the political discourse. It's not a strong part of my platform, and that's not to say that it's not important to me. It's just not something that I really kind of strongly run on. I mean, the Green Party policy is the Green Party policy, and I support our Green Party policies because they're passed by our members. What I can say is that I mentioned earlier, I talked to a lot of grade 10 students, and they're about that age, and they're very aware of what's happening with the news and what's happening, for example, with like scandals that the Liberals are going through, because they're studying it. So I think that they would actually really take that, it would be very important to them to vote. And they definitely would probably get out there to vote because it's almost like that's something that they could discuss when they get back to school the next day. So although it's not a very strong part of my platform pushing it, I do see that well, let me put it this way. I do defend that a lot of students of that age would be mature enough to vote.
Right. Yeah, kind of makes sense because what you're saying, like they're in there, they're studying it right at the time. It's the best
Yeah.
way to learn is by doing, I suppose. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So the next question we've got here is uh, a big question. So brace yourself. It's pretty wise. So you can pick the direction you want to go with this. But what do you see as the most important foreign policy issues facing Canada today? And what are your What are your stances on these issues, positions?
So foreign policy is such a wide topic. It can include trade agreements. It can include our obligations with international agencies like the World Trade Organization or the World Health Organization, or with NATO. I personally, and I can talk to all of that, but I personally want to focus on something that I feel has been forgotten by many Canadians, but is something that, if asked about, really brings out what Canada is about to many Canadians, and that's peacekeeping. There was a time when Canada was the leader in peacekeepers, but since the 90s, we've really dropped off the map in that area to we're down to about, I think it's about 40 peacekeepers. And we only have to look for examples like Rwanda and Darfur, where we could have probably changed people's lives and saved lives in those areas had Canada had a stronger presence on the peacekeeping international stage. So this requires more funding for our military, which I think, again, is something that many Canadians support. But we're funding our military in a way that a lot of Greens can buy into, because one of the main templates, one of the 6 points of being a Green Party is nonviolence. So if we can actually put more money into the military and do it in a way that actually helps to maintain peace across the globe, then I think this is something we should really follow through with. I mean, a lot of Canadians are talking about how we're not on the UN, we don't have a seat on the UN Security Council, but we can still bring issues to the Security Council and ask them to be voted on. So I think that that's not necessarily the main thing that we should be striving for. I think the main thing we should be striving for is more peacekeeping, so we can actually help protect human rights across Canada. We could have worked that into a lot of trade agreements like what we had with China back in 2012. I had a feeling. The one thing I held out hope about Stephen Harper is that he had strong human rights concerns. And he was putting off a trade agreement with China for a long time. And I was really hoping that he could have worked in some sort of agreement with China to improve human rights, but he didn't. And it almost looked like when they were doing the press conference, you could almost see a bit of shame in his eyes. That's not justifying it, but that's showing the opportunity that he let pass, that we could have done something there to help human rights in China, or at least put in mechanisms within the trade agreement to help human rights. And we didn't.
Yeah.
And I think Canada can really get back on the world stage with protecting human rights, and we should.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. I always knew that we were peacekeepers growing up, and I never really, I don't really know how peacekeeping works. I might look into that when we're done here.
Please, yeah, please do.
Yeah. So another question we got here. Beyond winning more seats, what is the most effective way for the Green Party of Canada to affect the national conversation on critical issues facing Canada?
Well, certainly, I believe that winning more seats is the best way to do that. Um, and I don't think that we should have this, what's the word I'm looking for? Conciliatory plan for not winning seats. I think we should always have the mentality that we shoot to form government, and we should always try to win in 338 ridings, because that's our best way to form government, because we will have a greater impact doing that. We've been on the fringes of the political discourse for quite some time, and we've made the most of those opportunities. I mean, we've been able to speak our minds, and we've been able to get out in communities, but we haven't had the impact that I know we can have. And that goes back to the point that we need to win seats to do this. Now, the way that we win seats actually kind of probably plays into answering this question also, which is two ways at the very least. One, not focus so much on the leader. Focus on more green candidates across Canada, so that people in those communities know they're green candidates, know that there's a green presence in those areas, and actually start listening to them, and maybe even come out and start volunteering. And two, having local issue campaigns. That brings a lot of attention to the Green Party. And not every riding can have a local issue campaign, especially in large urban areas like Vancouver, Toronto, or Montreal, or Ottawa. But there's so many ridings across Canada, and a lot of them do have local issues that should be taken up, like, for example, the old growth forests or the ancient forests in British Columbia. And so if we see the green candidates who are elected early and start building up a presence, kind of making a name for themselves and pointing out these issues, so that the local community can see how important these local issues are, then I think that is a way that, to address the answer, or to address the question, that we can have an impact. But at the same time, we are still having the mentality that we're winning seats.
Right. Yeah, it's very important to get seats in, and to absolutely shows strength.
Yes.
So next question we got is about how the kind of relationships that we have with the provincial parties. How important do you think it is for the federal Green Party to cooperate with the provincial Green Parties? And what would your approach be as leader to that cooperation going forward?
It's very important, because a rising tide raises all boats. And the Green Party has traditionally, in our short history, have had more success on the provincial level than on the federal level. And that leads to breakthroughs in the federal level. Now, Elizabeth May was the first to get elected in Saanich Gulf Islands, but we had 3 other MPs elected in British Columbia, MLAs elected in British Columbia, and that helped pave the way for Paul Manley to get elected. We elected 2 MLAs in New Brunswick, which helped pave the way for Jenny Atwood to get elected in Fredericton. And we're the official opposition provincially in Prince Edward Island. So although not all the Green parties see eye to eye on every issue, it is very important to work together. So and here's why, here's an example. So you just know, I know what I'm talking about. Earlier this year, I ran in a provincial by-election. There were two by-elections, interestingly enough, at the same time in Ontario, and the ridings were side by side. So that was pretty rare. But the two ridings, Ottawa Orleans and Ottawa Vanier, were side by side, and I ran in one of them. And to me, there was no other issue more important to the Green Party than these by-elections, because there was no other election going on. So I was hopeful that Greens across Canada would have come out and rallied to try to make a impact in these two ridings, which were traditionally very Liberal ridings. So I know it was a difficult task. But again, if we could have made an impact in there and started to pave the way to actually winning those ridings at one point in time, then again, that's that whole theory of a rising tide raises all boats. So as leader, the first thing I would do is, after October the 3rd, is go out to Saskatchewan, because they're having an election shortly afterwards. So campaign in Saskatchewan to help them raise a profile in that province. I think there is an election going on in New Brunswick. I'm pretty sure it will be done by the time the new Green Party leader is elected. But in Saskatchewan, we can't.
Yeah, you're the second person to mention that. Well, the second person I remember anyway. I'm sorry if anybody else did. The Saskatchewan's got that election happening there. I definitely.
Second other leadership contestant.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I just did the interview. I'm sure somebody else might have mentioned it.
Okay, they stole that from me then, but because I've been saying it for a long time.
Oh, well, we'll have to take that up with them.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Going and helping out. I totally agree. Rising tide raises all boats. It's a huge thing when we can have these really big successes provincially. It just changes the conversation in a big way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, it makes it seem like our party is a possibility. I think is one of the really important parts of it. You know, like, oh look, they can get elected. It's not a wasted vote. So you don't have to vote strategically.
Exactly. And a lot of Canadians don't separate provincial and federal politics. They just see the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party or the NDP Party. So they view the Green Party in that same way. They see it as a Green Party. So if we do win seats provincially, which again, historically, we've been able to do so more than we have federally, that just paves the way, as you said, to just show that the Green Party is a safe party to vote for and we're a winnable party.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be the last question that we've got before we close. Okay. We're just about at 7:30 here. So, and I think this ties really nicely in with a comment you made earlier, how you said that, ironically, even though we are seen by a lot of other parties as the party of the environment and dismissed otherwise, in this leadership race, we haven't had a lot of talk about the environment. So with the pandemic taking center stage in people's minds this year, the environment has absolutely dropped a number of places in Canadians' top list of priorities. This is pretty problematic for the Green Party. I think problematic for humanity in general. And it can be really problematic if we have an election next year, which is a possibility because it's a minority government.
Yeah.
So what can we do to alleviate that? How can we work around this issue?
Well, it does mean that we do have to focus more on other areas and show that we're a party that has a policy that affects everyone's lives, and we have a full platform. And we do, but we have to make sure that we get the message out that every part of our platform, that we're different from every other party, because every policy we has sustainability at its core. So we would never pass a policy that would hurt the environment in any way. And yes, the environment has gone down in people's priorities during this pandemic, but it's also, the pandemic has also shown how when action is forced upon us, that we can actually do things to help the environment. Before this pandemic, there was a lot of talk about how we can't cut these emissions, we can't reach our accord targets because it would hurt the economy too much. Well, this pandemic was thrusted upon us, and it definitely did hurt the economy. But it also showed that when push comes to shove, we can sacrifice the things we need to sacrifice to protect the environment. So rather than having it thrusted upon us by a pandemic, why not actually do it in an orderly way where we can actually do it in a way that can actually help the economy and the environment at the same time? And I think that we can actually pitch this messaging to Canadians. But again, it really comes back to the messaging that I've put forward throughout this entire campaign, that we have to be environmentally friendly and economically friendly, that we have to be responsible in both sense. That's the balance that Canadians are looking for. And I've been the only contestant to really talk about this balance. We can have one of one thing and one of the other, but neither one is going to get us elected, but a balance will.
Yeah. Well, this might almost seems like it was closing words to me, but we're actually out of time at this point. So I really want to thank you for joining us, Andrew. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
It was great. Thank you.
Just before we get going here, do you have any closing statements to make to the voters of Nanaimo Ladysmith, anybody else who might watch this YouTube link?
One of the things I'd like to share with everybody, and I'm talking straight from the heart because I'm a very genuine person. I know that other contestants have had more higher profiles in this campaign than I have. And again, I started late because I actually ran an election earlier this year. I put off my leadership campaign to run an actual election because I felt that that was more important for the Green Party overall. But it did come at a sacrifice. And I know that, one candidate has the backing of our former leader, and that's a lot of high profile. Another couple of candidates are really prominent former Liberals, and they bring that backing as well. And I'm someone that some could see as kind of punching a bit over their weight, but has a strong, clear, honest message. And if you stepped out and look at the big picture, that's what the Green Party is. It's a party that has trouble getting media exposure. It's a party that has trouble dealing with the more established parties, but yet everyone always compliments the Green Party of having the best candidates and the smartest candidates, and we do. And I'm a reflection of that in this campaign. So I really hope that your members really take an honest look at my campaign. I truly feel that, this leadership contest is a challenge, but if I were the leader of the Green Party, I would have the best chance of winning in a general election. And that's really what we should be striving for, to get into Parliament, to actually start passing our amazing policies. And I know I'm the best candidate to do that. So please really look hard at my platform and my past videos and reach out to me, because there's still a month, there's lots of time, and I'd really like to get to know more of you. And thank you so much for having me. This has been, this has been a really great interview, and I appreciate your time and your questions.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Just one last thing. What's your website for everybody?
Thank you for asking. It's andrewwest.ca.
That's great.
And
okay, so
if for some reason that there's still a few of you out there that aren't members, you have an hour and a half to join. So you can go to andrewwest.ca/join to get a membership. You can also donate there, and you can also request a volunteer. I'm getting requests all the time, including today. I got another volunteer request, so it's great news.
And that's thank you for bringing that up yet again. Hour and a half until you can become a member to be able of the Green Party in general, to be able to vote for the candidates that you want to vote for. So make sure, if you're watching this and you don't have your membership up to date, and you can even email us and we'll check it out afterward, or call me 778-689-1286, and I will help you get your membership, because it's very important that we have as many people as we can.
And you just made a very good point. Even I didn't know earlier this year that my membership lapsed. I've been a long time Green, and I was in the head office, and they looked me up, just got curious. I was like, oh, that elapsed about a few months ago. So I had to buy a new membership. So you may think you're a member because you've been a member for a long time, but it could be running out, and you would be, it's the best just to look it up and find out for sure, and make sure that you have a chance to vote.
Absolutely. Well, it's been great chatting with you, Andrew. Just so everyone knows, our next one's on Tuesday. That's going to be Glen Murray. I got that wrong last time, and it'll be the same time. And As always, these are always going to be available on our YouTube channel, and you can share that YouTube link with anyone who might have missed it. Thanks for joining us tonight, Andrew, and I hope you have a great one.
Thank you. Same with you.
Awesome. Good night, everybody.